Love has long been regarded as one of the most beautiful and sacred emotions in human life. When people fall in love, they hope to share, to be understood, to walk alongside one another, and to be loved sincerely. Ideal love helps people grow, become stronger, learn to live for others, and learn to cherish themselves. However, love does not always appear as gentle and positive as people often imagine. In reality, there are relationships that do not bring happiness. Instead, they gradually leave people feeling exhausted, wounded, doubting themselves, and losing faith in their own worth. This is toxic love, a form of relationship in which positive emotions are replaced by suffering, respect is replaced by control, and emotional safety is replaced by fear and insecurity. Escaping toxic love, therefore, is not simply about leaving another person. It is a journey of rescuing oneself from lingering wounds, a courageous choice to reclaim one's self-worth and rebuild life in a healthier direction. First of all, in order to escape a toxic relationship, people must be able to correctly recognize the true nature of the relationship they are experiencing. Many people confuse a relationship that has conflicts with a toxic relationship. In any relationship, conflict is inevitable because two people with different ways of thinking, personalities, and life circumstances cannot always agree with each other. However, healthy conflict differs from toxicity in that, in a healthy relationship, both partners can disagree yet still respect each other's feelings, are willing to listen, and try to resolve problems together. In contrast, in a toxic relationship, conflicts are often accompanied by insults, blame, belittlement, psychological manipulation, or even threats. The person involved does not just feel temporarily sad, but gradually develops feelings of fear, low self-esteem, self-doubt, and constant tension when around their partner. Toxic love can take many different forms, ranging from obvious acts of abuse to subtle, hard-to-detect emotional harm. Some relationships involve no physical violence or public verbal abuse, yet are filled with control, irrational jealousy, and violations of privacy, forcing one partner to live in constant surveillance, suspicion, and restriction. In some relationships, one person constantly plays the role of the victim, frequently complaining and blaming the other, making their partner feel guilty for things that are not truly their responsibility. In other cases, love is used as an excuse to justify controlling behavior. I'm jealous because I love you. I forbid you because I love you. I need to know everything about you because I love you. These seemingly affectionate justifications actually conceal a lack of respect and a desire to control another person's life. One clear sign of toxic love is the feeling of gradually losing oneself within the relationship. People may realize that they are no longer as free and joyful as before, but have become cautious, anxious, and even afraid to express their true thoughts. They begin to change the way they dress, speak, and think just to please their partner. They give up friendships, personal interests, and individual dreams simply because the other person dislikes them or forbids them. Gradually, their life revolves around one person, while their own identity becomes smaller and fades away. When a relationship forces a person to sacrifice their individuality in order to survive, it is no longer healthy love, but a form of emotional imprisonment. However, what makes toxic love difficult to escape is not only the partner's behavior, but also the psychology of the person involved. Many people realize they are suffering, but still cannot leave because they are bound by emotions, memories, and fear. They fear loneliness, fear losing the one person they are attached to, fear starting over, and fear that no one else will ever love them. These fears lead them to stay in pain, convincing themselves that things will eventually get better, that their partner will change, or that if they endure a little longer, love will become beautiful again. In reality, however, in most cases, a toxic relationship rarely becomes healthy on its own without genuine change from both sides, especially from the one causing harm. Staying in such a relationship with vague hope only causes deeper emotional damage and greater loss of one's inner self. An important factor that maintains toxic love is emotional dependence. When people place all of their happiness in another person, they easily become emotionally dependent and feel unable to live without them. This dependence leads them to tolerate unhealthy behaviors because they believe the pain of being hurt is still easier than the pain of losing the person they love. In toxic relationships, the one who causes harm often takes advantage of this dependence to manipulate their partner's emotions, sometimes being cold and distant, sometimes being gentle and caring, trapping the other person in a cycle of hope and disappointment. This cycle becomes a psychological trap that makes it increasingly difficult to escape, as the person keeps waiting for the partner to become the loving person they were at the beginning of the relationship. Recognizing emotional dependence is an important step in beginning the journey out of toxic love. When people realize that they have allowed their happiness to depend too heavily on another person, they must learn to reclaim control over their own emotions. This does not mean becoming cold or emotionally closed off, but learning to build a foundation of happiness from within rather than leaving it in someone else's hands. People need to understand that their worth does not depend on whether someone loves them, but lies in who they are and who they are striving to become. In addition, escaping toxic love requires learning to establish personal boundaries. Personal boundaries are emotional, psychological, and behavioral limits that people set to protect themselves from harm. In healthy relationships, boundaries are respected and valued. In toxic relationships, boundaries are repeatedly violated. A person may be controlled in how they spend their time, have their privacy invaded, or be pressured into doing things against their will. The absence of clear boundaries makes people more vulnerable to manipulation and gradually strips them of the ability to protect themselves. Setting boundaries is not only about saying no to inappropriate behavior, but also about affirming one's needs and emotions and defending one's right to be respected in a relationship. However, for those who are used to self-sacrifice and endurance in love, setting boundaries can trigger feelings of guilt. They fear that protecting themselves will hurt their partner, damage the relationship, or cause conflict. But it must be understood that a relationship can only be healthy when both individuals are respected. If setting boundaries leads to anger, blame, or further violations, that is a sign that the relationship is unsafe and unhealthy. Continuing to compromise in such cases only results in deeper self-harm. Escaping toxic love is not a decision that can be made in a single moment, but a long process that requires psychological preparation. People must prepare themselves for the painful emotions that follow leaving. Sadness, emptiness, longing, and even doubt about their own decision. These emotions are completely normal, because breaking up does not only mean losing a person, but also losing a familiar part of one's life. However, accepting painful emotions does not mean returning to a relationship that caused harm. Instead, it is a necessary step in learning to live independently, face pain, and allow it to gradually fade with time. Moreover, support from healthy relationships outside plays a vital role in escaping toxic love. When trapped in harmful relationships, people often withdraw and stop sharing with friends and family. They may feel ashamed, fear being judged, or believe that others will not understand them. However, opening up to trustworthy people provides emotional support. Honest advice, empathy, and encouragement from loved ones can help individuals view their situation more objectively and find the strength to make healthier decisions. Being reminded that one deserves better love is a powerful form of emotional medicine in the healing process. Support from healthy relationships not only provides emotional grounding, but also helps break the cycle of isolation that toxic love often creates. In many unhealthy relationships, the harmful partner gradually distances the other person from friends and family by saying things like, "Only I truly understand you," "Your friends are bad for you," or by planting distrust toward others. When cut off from social support, people become more dependent on their partner and less able to recognize the harm they are experiencing. Reconnecting with friends and family restores perspective and helps people regain a more balanced view of life and their relationship. Alongside support from loved ones, seeking help from mental health professionals is often necessary. The wounds left by toxic love are not just temporary sadness. They can lead to long-term psychological effects such as anxiety, depression, loss of trust in relationships, or the development of unhealthy attachment patterns. Mental health professionals, with their training and experience, can help individuals identify deep-rooted wounds, understand why they are vulnerable to toxic relationships, and gradually rebuild healthier patterns for future relationships. Seeking professional help is not a sign of weakness, but an act of courage, choosing to face one's pain and actively heal. Another crucial aspect of leaving toxic love is learning to let go of the illusion that the other person will change. Many people remain in harmful relationships because they believe their partner will eventually change, realize their mistakes, and become better. They cling to beautiful memories from the early days of the relationship to convince themselves that the current behavior is temporary. However, holding on to the past or an idealized future version of a partner causes people to ignore the reality of the present. In truth, people only change when they genuinely recognize their problems and want to change from within, not because of another person's endurance or sacrifice. Waiting for change while continuing to suffer often leads to disappointment, because change cannot come from one-sided tolerance. Letting go of illusions does not mean becoming cynical about love, but learning to see reality clearly. It means distinguishing between healthy hope and blind hope. Healthy hope is built on concrete actions, mutual effort, respect, and commitment. Blind hope relies only on empty promises and brief, sweet moments amid repeated harm. Recognizing blind hope requires the courage to admit that the relationship no longer serves one's well-being, and that staying only deepens the wound. Another psychological barrier that keeps people trapped in toxic love is misplaced responsibility. In many unhealthy relationships, the person being harmed believes they are responsible for their partner's emotions and behavior. They think that if their partner is angry or hurtful, it must be because they themselves are not good enough, loving enough, or patient enough. This belief burdens them with responsibility that does not belong to them and leads them to tolerate further harm. In reality, every person is responsible for their own actions and emotions. A partner's toxic behavior is not the victim's fault, and no one is obligated to endure emotional or physical abuse to save another person. Understanding the boundary between one's own responsibility and the other person's responsibility is essential to leaving without being trapped by unjustified guilt. After leaving a toxic relationship, people often face a period of emptiness and confusion. This emptiness comes not only from losing a familiar person, but also from losing routines, rhythms of life, and roles they had become accustomed to in the relationship. Many feel lost and unsure how to live without the other person, because previously their plans, thoughts, and daily activities revolved around that relationship. This stage can feel disorienting and can lead to questioning one's self-worth. However, this emptiness is also an opportunity for self-rebuilding. Free from toxic constraints, people can rediscover their interests, reconnect with forgotten dreams, and create a life that truly reflects who they are. Rebuilding after emotional harm is not just about filling time with activities, but about healing from within. Healing requires courage to face emotional wounds, to acknowledge past pain and vulnerability. Rather than denying or escaping pain, people need to listen to their emotions, allow themselves to feel sadness, anger, and disappointment without letting those emotions control their entire life. Writing about feelings, talking to trusted people, or seeking professional help can help untangle emotional knots and gradually move out of the shadow of toxic love. An important part of healing is learning to forgive oneself. Many people, after leaving harmful relationships, fall into self-blame and regret for loving the wrong person, for not leaving sooner, or for enduring too much pain. Prolonged self-blame becomes an emotional burden that slows recovery. Forgiving oneself does not mean denying the harm or excusing past mistakes, but recognizing that at that time, one made the best choices possible based on one's understanding and emotional capacity. Self-compassion makes it easier to learn from the past and open up to healthier possibilities in the future. Alongside self-forgiveness, rebuilding self-esteem is crucial. In toxic relationships, self-worth is often eroded by criticism, control, and invalidation. Over time, people may begin to believe they are not good enough or do not deserve healthy love. Rebuilding self-esteem is a gradual process that begins with small acts of self-care, respecting one's emotions, setting personal goals, and acknowledging even small efforts. As self-worth grows, people become less likely to tolerate harmful relationships in the future. As self-esteem is restored, people gain the ability to approach future relationships with greater clarity and maturity. Painful experiences, when reflected upon properly, become lessons that help individuals better understand their needs, boundaries, and values. Instead of fearing love, they learn to love in healthier ways, without losing themselves, without accepting harm as the price of being loved. Perhaps the greatest lesson of toxic love is realizing that genuine love does not cause prolonged suffering, does not strip away self-respect, and does not demand endurance as the condition for staying. Beyond choosing a more suitable partner, individuals also need to maintain and strengthen an independent personal life in new relationships. One common mistake that leads to emotional dependence is losing one's own world when falling in love. When all time, energy, and emotions are devoted to one person, the relationship can become psychologically burdensome for both sides. Maintaining friendships, personal interests, and individual goals not only preserves one's identity but also creates balance in love. A healthy relationship does not require people to abandon their world. It encourages two individuals to grow side by side while supporting each other's separate journeys. Escaping toxic love also means confronting distorted beliefs about love that may have formed through past experiences. Many people grow up with the belief that love must involve sacrifice, endurance, and even suffering. Such beliefs can normalize unhealthy relationships by framing pain as normal in love. However, it is important to distinguish between natural difficulties in building intimacy and harm caused by disrespect, manipulation, or emotional abuse. Love does not have to be perfect, but it should not be the primary source of ongoing emotional pain or psychological harm. Reframing beliefs about love helps people set clearer standards for future relationships. Another key part of leaving toxic love is learning to face loneliness. Many people remain in harmful relationships simply because they fear being alone. However, loneliness does not equal emptiness or worthlessness. Solitude can be an opportunity to reconnect with oneself, listen to inner needs, and build a healthy relationship with oneself. When people learn to be alone without feeling lost, they are less likely to cling to unhealthy relationships just to fill emotional gaps. Emotional independence is the foundation for healthy relationships in the future. During healing, moments of emotional weakness are inevitable. Memories of the good times may resurface, and longing may tempt people to return despite knowing the relationship was harmful. Such moments are natural because emotions do not disappear instantly when the mind has decided to leave. What matters is reminding oneself of the reasons for leaving and the pain endured, so that fleeting emotions do not pull one back into the old cycle. Writing down the reasons for leaving, the lessons learned, and the harm experienced can help reinforce resolve during moments of vulnerability. Ultimately, the journey out of toxic love is a process of inner growth. Through pain, people learn to listen to themselves, set boundaries, and love themselves before loving others. These lessons, though learned through tears, become the foundation for building healthy, respectful, and equal relationships in the future. After passing through the darkness of toxic love, people come to truly appreciate safe love. A love in which they can be themselves, be cared for, and not have to pay for love with pain and loss.